It's Mozz, it's Chaz, and we really want to be your friend. We hope this podcast never ends. Hey y'all, welcome to episode 11 of AKA Jessica Jones, the series. Episode 11 is AKA I've Got the Blues, a reference to the blues you get when you take too many reds.
Oh, how interesting! I didn't even catch that. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the interpretations. I think that the blues is part of it. I think that you have, the idea, and of course you just have the way that color is used as a thematic throughout this. Purple. Purples and blues are all throughout the color palette of the series. So, it's all pretty good. But yeah, I always took that to be that, and also because when I there's this great film, a great musical comedy from the 1950s called Silk Stockings, and there's a great song in there called by the Russian classical composer who gets taken to Hollywood and introduced to jazz, and he comes back to Russia, and he writes his new great song, I Got the Red Blues. He goes, I got the red blues, I got the red blues. It's great, and it's a really fantastic scene because they have them all in the little cramped Soviet apartment, and he's playing on the piano. Everyone's dancing around, and then all of a sudden someone will walk through and read from the Communist Manifesto, and everyone stands still because you gotta show the respect, or go to the gulag. It's pretty great. Anyway, but AKA I've Got the Blues, directed by Uta Brysovitz. Or Brysovitz, I don't know if we were doing got the IE there, but sometimes you do that with the short E, sometimes you do it with the long I. You might even do it with the wits instead of the vits. I can't say for certain. Writers this episode are Melissa Rosenberg, who gets that created by credit. Scott Reynolds and Liz Friedman gets our written by. And then, who is our staff writer? Good old Jenna Reback. This show would fall apart without her. So as you may recall, last episode, Kilgrave gets freed by Robin, Colby Minifee. And we open up this episode with Jessica sort of coming to, in not a good way.
Yeah.
And she gets invited to meet Kilgrave at a restaurant.
Right.
And we had actually seen last episode where he had arranged for Hope to go free.
Right.
All nice and legal. He went and talked to the DA, and he convinced him that there wasn't a case. And not for nothing, I think after that moment, the DA said, "Oh yes, I kind of see Hope's point now." Yes, very believable, this story she's given us now. So she's been released. She's been, all charges dropped. But of course, because she got attacked and Kilgrave got free, Kilgrave's the one who picked her up.
Because she was knocked out and not there to pick her up.
Well, exactly. So Jessica was supposed to come and pick her up, and it didn't work out the way that she had wanted. In fact, in possibly the worst possible way. Because now Kilgrave has Hope, and Kilgrave has the entire circle of people who had already been victims of Kilgrave.
Poor guys.
Oh, yeah. And, man, you want to talk about, don't stir the pot. It is just it is horrible what these people have gone through. And it gets worse because, of course, they meet, Jessica meets Kilgrave there, and they're all standing there with nooses on their necks, ready to jump.
Yeah.
And we get some neat flashbacks in this episode back to Jessica and And Trish's first meeting, we get young Trish, played by Catherine Blades, and who's playing young Jessica here? Elizabeth Cappuccino.
Cappuccino.
Yeah, I hope that's her actual name. You know, I hope she didn't think that was a good stage name. As if it's her actual name, it's like, no, we're the Cappuccinos. Come from Capuchin. That's our name. We can't make this stuff up. Anyway, so everyone has been captured by Kilgrave, and Kilgrave is basically telling Jessica, look, I'm going to make a deal with you. You let me go. I let everyone go. You stay away from me. I'll stay away from you. No one ever has to get hurt, except for the people I want to hurt, but it won't be you or any of your friends.
Yeah.
Which is pretty lousy offer when you think about it.
I mean, honestly, is it? He'll basically steer clear of you and everyone you know. And honestly, Jessica's always been the person that says, I just want to mind my own business. Go hurt somebody in another part of the. It doesn't seem like a bad deal. Considering you've tried to capture him 3 times, and 3 times, don't you think?
Well, here's what I'll say. And I think this is what the crux of the episode is that why we get these flashbacks is to see that as much as Jessica doesn't want to be the hero, she has to be the hero. She has, it's an interesting thing in the comic books because all this stuff gets retconned backwards, which is now kind of weirdly, you have to kind of forward retcon it in the MCU because in the comic books, Jessica Jones went to high school with Peter Parker.
Oh.
Yes. Now, you can't do that in the MCU. You can't have her geek out on that. You could maybe have her geek out on maybe Bruce Banner later, but we'll have to deal with that later. But the idea that with great power comes great responsibility, which is this, I think it's intrinsic to Jessica. And I think that's sort of her problem. I think Jessica's problem isn't that she doesn't want to be a hero. I think it's that she knows she has to be a hero.
Yeah.
And it's like annoying because she didn't ask for these powers. She doesn't really want these powers, but she has these powers. And because she has these powers, she's got to be a hero. Fudge on a cracker.
Yeah. Apparently Hope thought that she was considering it.
Yeah, well, you know what it is, but that's the thing, is Hope understands the reason she hasn't killed, because here's the thing. Apples to apples, the reason she didn't kill Kilgrave before was because she wanted to free Hope.
Mm.
Hope's freedom was the reason she didn't kill Kilgrave. Because she certainly wanted to. Once you realized there was a way to control Kilgrave, she would have killed him if Hope wasn't already there. And what Hope realizes is the reason you won't end this man is because you think I can still be free. And you think that if, you walk away, you want to bring him to justice because you want to free me. I'm going to tell you, you can't free me. I'm already dead. And
it's not worth it. Other people will be hurt.
Well, exactly. And so she offs herself in a really horrific way.
Yeah.
Which, of course, kind of in a weird way, kind of leads to a secondary, not helpful aspect of things, because yes, she's off herself, but then Kilgrave has to make a run for it, has everyone kill themselves, and so Jessica has to save all of them, and so Kilgrave gets away. Yeah. And that's the problem of it. All in all, she does what she has to do, and she does hold Hope with her. As she passes, and she promises to kill Kilgrave.
Yeah.
She promises, she makes that word that she is going to end him. And that leads us on our adventure of this episode. which is, and of course, what the whole deal was, the reason why she asked Jessica there was he was going to trade Hope, let Hope go, if she would give him his father.
Right.
He has his father, gets to have his revenge, yada yada, and go from there. And at this point, he has the vaccine. He tested the vaccine.
But it didn't work, did it?
It did not. Although, again, there was maybe this argument that was saying maybe it needed like more than 5 minutes to take effect.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the craziness of it, is like, you know, I know that, yes, if you get a vaccine, it's going to protect you from a disease, but like not that minute, you know?
Right. But it almost seemed like it was working at first, because when they first walked in, Kilgrave tells his father to take a seat, and he doesn't. And they share a moment, Jessica and Kilgrave's father. They look at each other and they're like, "Hey, it's working!" And all of a sudden he says it twice, and the third time, and he's like, "Oh, I have to go." And then he seems so disappointed. So I felt like it was working, or I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think maybe it just needed more time, and they didn't have it. That was the sad conundrum. And the idea is that maybe it would have worked had he had more time. And maybe what one could say is that had he said of his own accord and he not been pressed, maybe everything would have worked out. But we'll never know, because of course he takes his father. And this is where things get a little really hardcore and a little rough, because of course we have Jessica has become obsessed with finding Kilgrave. She's become obsessed with finding Kilgrave's father, whom she assumes is already dead.
Yeah.
And she starts going through the morgues to find the dead bodies, and is looking for
Kilgrave's father's body.
Tells the morgue attendant to find her older people, and we get a great thing about trying to use celebrity to get what you want, and then finding out that not everybody is a fan of Patsy Walker. But you know what? Even if you're not a fan of Patsy Walker, probably you're a fan of something that Patsy Walker can get for you. Like a seat at, was it Le Cirque, or it was, or Satay. Satay was the place he wanted to go. So he gets the chef's table, and now mi morga es su morga. And that leads us along to her finding out about Clemens, which leads us to what is, I gotta say, our big fight. Now, prior to this, we do have Simpson coming to Patsy beforehand, and Patsy, being an old hophead herself, saying, you're flying. You are hopped up on something. I can tell. And, basically kicking him out and not wanting to deal with it. He then comes to Jessica and is presenting himself. And she rather quickly, I think, unravels his entire story.
Yeah.
Finds out that, no, yes. And I like the whole thing about the ballistics.
Yeah.
That, and you know what? And here's what I'm going to tell you. The thing of it is she knows Kilgrave wouldn't have shot Clemens. He would have told Clemens to shoot himself.
Right.
That's the thing. That's, Kilgrave's style isn't to shoot you. Kilgrave isn't, that's not his, because Kilgrave prides himself on, I never hurt anyone. No one ever does anything they don't want to do. I tell them to do it, and they want to do it, but they all wanted to do it. And prior to that, sorry, I'm jumping around here, I know. It's being very disjointed. There's so much going on. Prior to that scene, though, we get Jessica basically decompensating. She sees a hipster in a purple suit, goes after him, gets hit by a truck, breaks the poor man's truck.
Right.
As she's walking away, we get that, oh, who's going to pay for my truck? But she does have cracked ribs, which, of course, when she does come into a confrontation with Will,
definitely is a factor.
it is a factor. And just prior to this, and this is, you see, this is what is great, because this is where we get our first Marvel team up. Because, as we know, Patsy Walker is the Hellcat.
Right.
She is a superhero. She's not yet, but she gets her first taste of superheroism here, because as Jessica is fighting Will, and Will, he's hopped up on Red, so he is like full on super soldier here. And you see that with Jessica's broken ribs after just getting hit by a truck, and not having slept for a day, he's actually holding his own against her.
Yeah.
And, they wind up locked in the bathroom. This is just after Trish had to escape from her own panic room and get down to Jessica's apartment from her own place. They get out, and Patsy decides, because she has the bottle of Reds, she takes a Red.
He told her not to.
Yeah, he told her not to.
What are you going to do?
And he makes the statement, listen, if you take, he says, well, it didn't kill you. It's like, yes, because I've built up a tolerance. If you take a Red without a blue to calm you down, your brain is going to be so wired, it's going to forget to tell your body to breathe.
Yeah.
And then we get a really kick-butt Hellcat scene as she beats the heck out of Simpson. And you see her like, wow, is this how you feel all the time? And you can see she's getting that little starry look in her eye about, ooh, superpowers, yay!
Yeah.
And then she forgets to breathe.
Right.
And she seizes up, she can't breathe, and we get into the ambulance. And honestly, this is like the best moment for an EMT. For best performance by an EMT is this guy. And I just love where let's see, I guess that's Kylan Durrell Jones as male EMT. And he says to her, "Are you sure it was a stimulant?"
Yeah.
Because, of course, what's really important is like, listen, if it's not a stimulant, what I'm going to do will essentially make her brain explode. I'm going to do this. This is going to bring her down, but it better have been a stimulant. And as luck would have it, it was a stimulant. And, she is brought down and she survives. Which goes to show you didn't need a blue. You just needed something to reverse the Red.
Now, at this point, I mean, I guess we can't assume that it was a placebo, right? The Red.
No. The Red was not a placebo in these. Like I said, in the books, that was the thing. Although, again, like I said, they've backtracked it and sidetracked it, and like now, actually, Nuke is actually a cyborg.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I kind of like that it's not a placebo though. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, well, no, yeah. It's honestly, I think a lot of people when they got to that whole placebo thing, but I think the point of it was just, it's sort of like, every so often comic book writers will go to kind of the cliched well. It's like when Batman would fight Two-Face and he'd like throw a bunch of other coins in the air. Because then he can't, like, oh, wait, which was my coin? I can't decide what I'm going to do without my coin, and so I think something like that, like revealing it as a placebo was kind of meant in that kind of, I don't want to say a cheap cop-out, but kind of an easy go-to way to undo it, Because, I think the idea that maybe you have someone conditioned in a way that because for what it's worth, one of the biggest problems they've always had with the super soldier serum in the comics is the idea that basically what happens is people, it's like they say, they get the Reds and they just keep on ramping up, and then they kind of go mad because there's no stabilizing force. They eventually suggested in most of the books that what it is there's this Vita Ray component to the process. And that's what stabilizes it, but no one ever uses that. They just use the serum, and the serum's great, but it eventually drives you mad. And they've actually made it this really much more complex thing now, where it's like there's like 2 parts of the serum, and then you need the Vita-Rays, and if you get all of it together, it works. But if you just get like 1 part of it, and everyone always just had like 1 part of it, you're 99% of the time just go insane.
But the truth of it is, in reality, that's exactly how people would react.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because of course, basically, one of the, I mean, this is going to go a little deep divey on you, but it's one of these things about Captain America. Everyone thinks about Captain America as the super soldier, as the physically primed specimen. But in the actual comics, there's actually this whole point about him that he's not only at physical peak human perfection, he's also at peak human mental perfection. That he's actually also made super intelligent.
That's why he can pick up the hammer, because he's like pure of heart.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the idea. But what I always think it is that, and like, there's this aspect of it, which is that it's his reflexes that he just thinks so fast. He sees the bullets. That's how he can dodge bullets. Because as they're coming towards them, his brain is moving faster than the bullet. And that's how he gets his shield up in time. And that's how he can do the very complex math of the shield being thrown and ricocheting off 6 things to hit where it's going to hit, And that's this aspect of Captain America that people always forget about. And this idea that you can't just increase that physical mass, you've got to have the brain to run it. That if you don't have a properly souped up brain, it all falls apart.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's actually a whole other. I mean, I could do headcanon stuff on this with this character called Protocide. So Protocide is this character who, again, he got the Captain America Super Soldier Serum, but it kind of he didn't get the full treatment, and he died shortly. He died the day before Captain America got it. Steve Rogers got it, and he gets put in cold storage. Like many years later, he gets pulled out of cold storage. And AIM, which is this Hydra offshoot, basically fix him. And they make the thing about Protocide is he doesn't talk. And everyone always says they think he might have brain damage because he doesn't talk. But actually, I was thinking, it might not be that he doesn't talk. It's that his brain has been sped up to the point where he's much more quiet and much more cautious about what he says. The other guys who had the successful serum, as it were, Steve Rogers and William Burnside, were both already very intelligent guys. So when their intellect got sort of moved up a couple notches, the relative difference was less for them. So they don't even think about how much their intellect got increased. But for Protocide, he was just a big dumb guy who liked to fight. And then when he gets turned into, a guy who's seeing everything that's going on around him, his immediate urge is most likely going to be to get quiet and just to sort of watch everything, because suddenly he's not used to noticing everything, and now all of a sudden he does. At least that's always been my fan theory on him. But the point is that basically, when you're having these reds and these whites and these blues, what the idea is that you are ramping the guy up, and then you're using the pills to sort of regulate it. And the idea being that when you were using these, that basically it was easy to ramp a guy up, but keeping him from completely going mad was the difficulty. And then, and that's essentially what we have with Patsy here, where she stops breathing, and they have to save her. They do get her saved, and we get a great line in here from Jessica, which is that Patsy's one of the 2 people on this earth she actually cares about. And we get, ooh, who's the second person? And who was the second person, Mozz?
Is it Luke?
I would assume so. That seems to be the implication.
Yeah, I was thinking it's either Luke or Malcolm.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, really, if we want to be honest, logically, it should be Malcolm. Right. Because really, what is her connection to Luke aside from, a little bit of Bidodio dough? But you know what? I guess he's pretty good at the Bidodio dough. So,
and it's a special thing. Neither of them has had it like that before,
Yeah. Well, that's the idea. And It was an interesting thing with the Luke Cage story that they went after this to now tell Luke Cage's story, because in a very real way they made Luke Cage kind of subordinate to Jessica's story throughout this.
Right.
And, although that works for Jessica's story, Luke Cage had a whole history before he became, in the comics, before he became subordinate to Jessica. And this is, I think, maybe one of the complexities, and I won't say it's a negative, it's just a complexity when you're telling these stories that, you want to tell the character who's interesting story now, but often they're tied to other people who had a whole history before them. I think right now you're having this kind of issue with Kamala Khan, and this idea people would love to introduce Kamala Khan to the MCU, but they can't really have a Ms. Marvel until they have a Captain Marvel, and they actually have to even show that you go from Ms. Marvel to Captain Marvel. There's a whole thing there, and to get that character in there, it's a lot more complex when you have this, when you hit upon this great new character, this new Spider-Man, if you will, at when you're already into the whole Marvel universe, and then you want to retell that story,
Well,
but and that's what Jessica Jones' situation is here, and again, to go touch back in with Iron Fist, which we will be seeing, one of the biggest issues of Iron Fist is that Iron Fist as a character is almost always seen as the secondary character. So him leading his own thing, it's not to say that Iron Fist hasn't led his own books, he has many times, but he is a very golden age hero, he's a very throwback hero. And I think that for that he does have this kind of secondary quality to him, which makes him harder in a lead role. But like I said, in this we get Luke Cage pushed into this background of Jessica's story. Well, when then Luke Cage got his own story, he more than shined on his own.
Right, and it always felt like there was more to him, that he wasn't there just as a sidekick, but he was there because, this is interesting, or let me help here, I don't think he ever got downplayed to that level.
Yeah. I mean, well, we're going to see what happens in the next couple episodes, because there is some pretty, like I say, man, if you thought these last 3 episodes have been intense and exciting and with a lot going on, you have not seen anything yet.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, not for nothing. We end off this episode. We end off this episode with 2 things. One is the Men in Black coming in to gather up, such a, and not S.H.I.E.L.D. One can make that point, that these are not S.H.I.E.L.D. people coming in to sweep him up. This is just some other group it's an interesting thing. We do tend to focus on the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., especially here on the Nuff Said Network. But, when we look back at, like, the Incredible Hulk, and very much before, without S.H.I.E.L.D., even though you're existing in a world with S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Incredible Hulk series, because you have Tony Stark actually making his crossover appearance in it, it's very much established that, as much as S.H.I.E.L.D. is doing its own thing, so were other groups. That other groups within the government and within the private sector were all dabbling in the magic serum business. And
I see that.
Yeah, and so we see Simpson getting swept up, because you gotta get him back in the program, kids.
Right. He's an investment to them.
Oh yeah, especially now that he's back in, and we saw him trying to leave the group, and the group sending 2 guys to come get him, not realizing that Simpson's the best at what he does, and what he does is not pretty.
Yeah, I was wondering, why weren't those guys on the red pill?
They probably were. It's just that Simpson was on more red pills.
Oh.
See, that's the thing about Simpson, is he's got this better tolerance for the reds. So when he's on the reds, he's really on the red. I mean, if you'll remember, when they first introduced the concept of the reds, Kozlov tells him, okay, you take 1 red. And he tells him, he's saying, I could really go for another red. And he's like, you already had a red today. You don't have another red. You have a white to maintain your level, and then we give you a blue to cool you down. So 1 red, one white, and then one blue when you're done with the mission. You know, but he's like, nope, I'm going to do it. And as soon as Kozlov leaves, you see him take 2 reds and pop them.
Yeah.
You know, because he wants the reds. He's going for the reds, and that's why he's a dangerous man. But it's also why why they want him back, because like Luke Cage, there's something freaky about this guy's DNA that lets him handle it.
Yeah.
You know?
I wonder if it's like, you know, only certain people can stand it. And, you know, obviously we're starting to see quote unquote mutants, but maybe even to take the scientific approach to changing people, it takes a certain level of being different to be able to stand it.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, you know, if you have to have some kind of a receptor for it. And what it is that, you know, like I say, it's like ramping someone up is the easy part. It's bringing them down that's the hard part, and that's what we get with Simpson. Now, what Simpson has is perhaps a natural, you know, receptor for this particular method of ramping up, you know. You know, for example, if you tried to make him bulletproof like Luke Cage, that might not work for him. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you could always rewrite it so that they do have some sort of inhuman DNA in them, because that's something we've established. But I think it's actually better when it's just a random fluke. You know, I like when superpowers, when it's not really that reproducible, because if nothing else, it explains why we don't have armies of super soldiers. And the reason why is because it often doesn't work, you know. And getting 1 or 2 or even a dozen super soldiers out of the deal is great. You know, when we look at in Winter Soldier, what we actually had were you know, the Winter Soldier program, which actually in the comic books would have been the Wolf Sputter program, of which Black Widow was a part, because Black Widow was in the comic book, she had the Black Widow and the Wolf Sputters. And the Wolf Sputters were the male version of it. And in that, they get this sort of super soldier serum knockoff, of which Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, is like the one person who actually gets through it okay, you know. Because again, it's that one in a million for whom the side effect is you get to live, you know.
Right.
Everyone gets the powers, but only some of us get to live. And speaking of people who got to live, we see Luke Cage tidy up his bar and then blow it up.
Oh, man. Poor guy.
Yeah. Well, second time a building's falling on him. Although this is technically, I guess, the first time a building's falling on him. But, you know, later we do it again. So for those of you wondering why no one cared about, you know, a bomb going off in a building and collapsing on Luke Cage and him digging himself out, it's because, you know, this is New York and this is kind of, you know, that is a Tuesday. So, yeah, and that's kind of where we ended, where we see that Luke Cage is sort of out of it, and he's like, you know, and Jessica's got him and patting him down, and, you know, but he is alive because, of course, he is Luke Cage. But, you know, we're going to get to that next episode. What exactly just happened? Why he blew up the bar or how the bar got blown up. I guess actually we don't know that he blew up the bar. We just know the bar blew up with him inside.
Oh, interesting. Because, like, right before you get, like, this little thing where, like, we found your boyfriend, and I thought somebody was going to blow him up. Huh.
Yes. Well, that is exactly what happened there, was they blew him up. But anyway, we will talk about that next episode next week, which, you know, right now, me and Mozz, we just did the last 3 episodes all in a row. I hope it doesn't sound too slapdash, but we did because we want to get Jessica out of the way before Iron Fist drops. Iron Fist drops right now. We're recording on Monday. Iron Fist drops on Friday. Our next time we're going to do the last 2 episodes of Jessica Jones, and then we're going to do the triumphant Iron Fist #1. So everyone tune back in 3 weeks for that, and tune back in 1 week for the next episode of Jessica Jones. Okay, Mozz, how could people find you if they wanted to reach out to you?
They can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. It's spelled MOZZMANZOOR.
Okay, and of course you can always follow me, write to me in that old-fashioned email way at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And follow me on the Twitters at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. Okay, thank you once again for joining us here on the AKA JonesCast as we wrap up this first season of Jessica Jones. We really want to be your friends. We hope this podcast never ends. Good night.